And joining us now is former Senator George Mitchell, who served as a U.S. envoy for Middle East peace from 2009 to 2011. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Mitchell. When you served as President Obama's Mideast envoy, you publicly pushed to try and get a stop to settlements. So why are you now saying that the U.S. should have vetoed last week's UN Security Council resolution condemning settlement building?
Well, President Obama vetoed one during my time in office as well. I think that the resolution stated the policy correctly. The United States has always opposed settlements. 9 American presidents, from Johnson and Nixon down through George W. Bush and Obama, have publicly opposed Israel's policies with respect to settlements. But the purpose of American policy is to get the two sides together in a negotiation to reach an agreement on a two-state solution. And unfortunately, the timing and circumstance of this resolution ended up pushing the parties in the opposite direction. The Palestinians now feel emboldened and are pursuing a course of action to try to get a state through international institutions. In my judgment, that won't work, because while they might get a nominal state, the only way to get a real state on the ground is with Israel's full participation in negotiations. Israel, on the other hand, is taking what I think is an unproductive course of deepening its isolation around the world. It was already deep in the Muslim world, which comprises 1/5 of the world's population, soon to be 1/3. But now the Prime Minister, getting into hassles with Britain, France, New Zealand, Spain, and other natural allies, creates an incredible situation where today, to the best of my knowledge, not a single country in the world, out of nearly 200 countries, has come out in support of Israel's position on settlements. So I think it's pushed the parties away and created a very acrimonious atmosphere. It's clear that President-elect Trump is going to change some policies, but I hope very much that he'll think long and hard before reversing what has been a bipartisan American policy under 9 presidents over a 50-year period with respect to Israeli settlements.
Senator Mitchell, do you believe, though, that the Obama administration was right to set a marker on settlement building and to abstain from this UN Security Council vote? Was that the right thing to do?
No, I said I thought the president should have vetoed the resolution. I think a better effort would have been to try to get it delayed past the next inauguration. But I think in the end, it probably has created a situation that the parties are now, with so much emotion involved, further away from negotiations now than they were.
We know that Donald Trump's pick to be U.S. ambassador to Israel is a big supporter of settlements. What's your biggest worry about a Trump administration that appears ready and willing to reverse 50 years of American presidents on Israeli settlement building?
Well, the ambassador designate has made many statements as a private citizen that are contrary to American policy, not just on settlements. According to some press reports, he has indicated possible support for full Israeli annexation of the entire West Bank. That would be a dramatic, really deeply divisive move in the region with unforeseeable consequences. But I don't know that President Trump is bound to the views of a private party before he became a member of the administration. I think it's just the opposite. Whatever President-elect Trump decides, that's the position that the ambassador will be taken. And as I said, I hope whatever changes he may make in policy, that he does not reverse the policy that has existed under 5 Republican and 4 Democratic presidents over a 50-year period.
What would you say was the point of this speech that Secretary of State John Kerry delivered today? Was anything achieved in this?
Secretary Kerry deserves a lot of credit, in my judgment, for a tremendous personal effort in the region over the term of not only his time in office, but previous to that as a senator and chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. And he clearly, that passion and that commitment came through. I believe that essentially it was a robust defense of a two-state solution. You may agree or disagree with some aspect of what he said, but to me, it's a very persuasive and powerful argument that there really is only one way to resolve this problem. That's through a two-state solution, and that requires the parties to take steps in direct negotiations with the assistance of the United States to make that possible.
Senator Mitchell, for people who might not understand the issue of settlements, and for some people who might say, look, the Israelis pulled out of the Gaza Strip at one point, gave that back to the Palestinians. Obviously, it's been a bit of a sore point there. But what do you say to people who say this doesn't change the facts on the ground? They're building in areas that Palestinians may want for a future state, but why not build?
The Geneva Conventions, to which all of the countries involved are parties, explicitly prohibits a country which gains control of territory through conflict from placing its citizens into that occupied territory. That's a violation of international law. And so the United States and almost every country in the world do not recognize the validity of the settlements because they allege they are in violation of the Geneva Convention. Now, Israel has embarked on a policy which began 50 years ago with quite a different purpose than the current policies. It was a defensive mechanism to establish so-called tripwire communities along what were then regarded as vulnerable borders. It's since become different and now represents a large and full-scale, we're now numbering in the several hundreds of thousands of people occupying territory that it was anticipated that a Palestinian state would be created on. Go back, if you will, to 1947, when the United Nations proposed a two-state solution, dividing the territory between a Jewish state in Israel and a state for Arabs in what would be Palestine.
Senator, do you think realistically, sorry to interrupt, but do you think realistically,
if I could just finish, Israelis accepted that then. Israelis accepted the concept of a Palestinian state. Palestinians, Arabs, the Arab states rejected it, and the first of many wars began, all of which were won by Israel. So the two-state solution has a long history and was originally a United Nations concept accepted by Israel but rejected by the Arabs.
Do you think that Jerusalem could one day be the capital of two states?
Yes, President Clinton, in his parameters, which I think have been widely distributed and acknowledged by many as sort of a general outline, provided that the portions of Jerusalem that now are Jewish would be the capital of Israel, and portions of it that are inhabited by Palestinians would be the Palestinian capital. Keep in mind, you have another area of contention here. Jerusalem, as it existed prior to 1967, was a smaller place geographically than it is now. After Israel gained control of Jerusalem in the 1967 war, it annexed a large territory to the north, east, and south of the old Jerusalem and designated that as part of Jerusalem. That's what's called East Jerusalem. It was part of the West Bank, and no countries in the world, including the United States, have recognized that annexation, although to almost all Israelis of whatever political persuasion, they regard it as a fundamental part of Jerusalem.
Senator, before I let you go, I want to ask you, President Obama's push, his strong push for a two-state solution over his past 8 years in office, do you think it could ultimately cost the Dems in the 2018 election?
Oh, that's so speculative it's impossible to know. It depends upon who the candidates are, what the issues are then, what the circumstances are on the ground.
Do you think he pushed too hard, Senator? Do you think he pushed too hard, Senator, on this issue, that it might have isolated some Democrats in America?
There may well be some Democrats who were offended by it. On the other hand, there might have been some Republicans who think he's right. Who knows? I think it's way too speculative to try to anticipate the 2018 election, because I'll guarantee you one thing, there'll be a lot of intervening events in the Middle East and elsewhere between now and 2018.
There's always a wild card, as you well know, in the Middle East. Senator George Mitchell, I want to tell you, I've been reading your book, A Path to Peace. I fully have enjoyed this book, so thank you for that. I appreciate it. Senator George Mitchell.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.